Hey everybody, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. Happy New Year. I am Dylan Randazzo, and as I just said, it is a happy new year, which means 2023, we still have it in the back burner. Oscar season is still not over. We are still going to be talking about those movies for the next few months, but it is January, and movies will be starting to come out that are part of the new calendar release dates of 2024. So it's time now for my annual most anticipated video of the coming year, this year being 2024. Now, how I do it a little differently than some other channels, some other rankings. I don't just do my top 15 overall most anticipated. Instead, I go month by month, picking one film from each month that I am most excited about. And then at the end, I'll pick three other films that don't have release dates yet, just because it's a little unfair for all the films out there that don't have a release date that they just can't join in on the fun. So I'll pick three more films at the end, and then I will compile a giant top 15 and then rank those films. So I'm going to go month by month, talking about films I'm excited for, notable films that maybe I'm not excited for but are worth mentioning at the very least, because you never know what's going to be a surprise. A few years ago, Top Gun Maverick wasn't even close to hitting my top 30 most anticipated movies, and it ended up being my number 2 movie of that year. Last year, Barbie wasn't on my radar. Oppenheimer was not part of this video. So I am really, really excited to see what movies we may not even be anticipating that end up being these huge hits, and movies that we haven't even heard of yet. I mean, there's probably plenty of movies that didn't even make my short list, just because they're still in production and people don't even know if they're going to be released or not. The stuff that's going to be released in like October, November, December of 2024, which makes it very exciting. I think it's going to be easier to kind of suss out the first few months, but as we get deeper, it'll be really fun kind of playing this guessing game and then looking back a year from now to see, were these the best movies of the year or were some of them flops? I mean, Next Goal Wins was on my top 10 of last year, so that only goes to show some of them don't always turn out to be as good as anticipated. But let's start it off here with January. January has already had a few releases come out, because I'm recording this a few days after the new year. Night Swim just premiered in theaters and was not really a huge hit. It sank more than it swum. Self-Reliance, a film, Jake Johnson film that is on Hulu, I believe, but also in theaters. I've been meaning to check that out, but that's not my most anticipated for this month. On the 12th, we do have Mean Girls, the musical. This is a movie adaptation based on the musical, which is based on the original movie. So it's kind of an adaptation of an adaptation. I don't know how to feel about this one. It looks okay, but I don't know. Maybe it's because they're not really marketing the musical angle of it. Maybe I just need to see it to believe it. I saw the musical on Broadway. I liked it, didn't love it. So I'm a little hesitant about that. The Book of Clarence, starring Lakeith Stanfield, looks very much my thing. The Beekeeper, a little bit of hesitancy since that's the director of the original Suicide Squad, just titled Suicide Squad, not The Suicide Squad. So obviously I'm a little weary about that. On the 26th, a film called Sometimes I Think About Dying hits theaters. This is a film I actually saw last year at the Sundance Film Festival, so I couldn't really count it because I'm not really anticipating it. I've already seen it, even though I'm anticipating seeing others see that movie. But for January, the pick I picked, and I tend to have a theme of picking Jenna Ortega films in January. A few years ago, I picked The Fallout as my most anticipated film of that January. And this year, I'm picking Miller's Girl. This is a film starring Martin Freeman and Jenna Ortega. It looks like this kind of like thriller between this teacher and this student. I don't know if there's like a romantic thing going on or if it's more of just like an erotic thriller type vibe.
You're my student, and I'm your teacher. That's all.
It's a little bit weird, it looks, but the trailer was intriguing, and I do love Jenna Ortega. I love Martin Freeman. I just think Jenna Ortega is one of the most talented actors we have working right now today. I mean, she has so much range, but she still has a similar quality in all her performances, a darkness and a mysteriousness that I really, really like. So I'm really excited for Miller's Girl. Listen, there's not a whole lot to choose from in January, but of the January releases, this is the one that piqued my interest the most. In February, on the 2nd, we have Argyle, which if you've seen the trailer over and over and over and over and over again, like I have, you probably aren't anticipating Argyle as much as anyone else. So I didn't put it on my list for that reason. I've seen the trailer so much, I kind of wanted to rip my eardrums out when I watched that thing. Orion and the Dark, which is an animated film by Charlie Kaufman, came close to making my list. I love Charlie Kaufman. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite films of all time, and he wrote that. He also did adaptation. I'm thinking of Ending Things, Anomalisa. He's just such an interesting anomaly, for lack of a better word, of a director and a writer specifically. I don't know much else about this film other than it's animated and it's Charlie Kaufman, but that's still enough for me to at least be excited about it. On the 9th, we're getting Lisa Frankenstein. I'm excited about this just because it's the same writer as Jennifer's Body, so obviously, kind of a camp horror film written by the same person. I'm definitely excited for. On the 14th, one of my least anticipated movies comes out, Madam Web. I am dreading seeing this. I had a headache within seconds of seeing that trailer, so I'm not necessarily looking forward to that one, but because I cover a Marvel podcast on my channel, I'm going to have to be. And then also Bob Marley, One Love, which every time I see another trailer for this, it looks more and more generic of a biopic. The fact that this was supposed to be an awards darling, but they delayed it to February, makes me think it's not going to be that good, but we'll see. Also, Ordinary Angels comes out on the 23rd. I don't know much about Ordinary Angels except for the screenplay is written by Kelly Freeman Craig, who directed not one, but two of my favorite coming of age films of all time, The Edge of 17 and this year's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, or I should say last year's because it's now 2024. So I'm excited about Ordinary Angels, even though I know very little of the premise. But my most anticipated film for February is Drive Away Dolls. This is another film that I didn't want to read too much into the premise of it. It looks like this fun crime road trip comedy kind of thriller. These two women who are taking this impromptu road trip from Florida. Things go awry, obviously, when they cross paths with criminals. I mean, it feels like a typical film you're used to seeing in any year, but I think the talent behind it with Ethan Cohen directing, Ari Wegner being the cinematographer of it. You got Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan as the leads. You got Matt Damon in this thing, Pedro Pascal, Coleman Domingo, Beanie Feldstein. I mean, this cast is stacked. I love the talent. I love Joel Cohen's Tragedy of Macbeth. So this is kind of Ethan Cohen's solo breakout after the Cohen brothers have kind of gone their separate ways. Not gone their separate ways. They're still brothers. They're still, very much loving toward one another. But, they're kind of going on their own solo career paths again. And it's going to be really exciting to see Ethan Cohen kind of just stand alone here. And the trailer had me hooked. So that's my most anticipated for February.
Wow, you've had a full day.
Moving on to March, there are some big ones in March. On the 8th, we're getting Kung Fu Panda 4, which is a huge DreamWorks release. I mean, DreamWorks had a lot of luck with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish just a few years ago. So I think Kung Fu Panda 4 could also be a resurgence for that franchise that has seemingly fallen off. Damsel, a new Netflix film starring Millie Bobby Brown. It's going to be great to see her get work beyond Stranger Things because I think she's a very talented actress. Love Lies Bleeding. This trailer came out and looked absolutely incredible. Kristen Stewart's in it, but again, March is just so stacked that I can't even put this as my most anticipated because there's so many great things coming out in March, including a new Ghostbusters film. I'm a huge Jason Reitman fan. This feels like a really cool new take on Ghostbusters, The Frozen Empire. You have Roadhouse, which is a remake of Roadhouse starring Jake Gyllenhaal in the Patrick Swayze role. Again, a weird choice, but an intriguing choice. Bong Joon-ho's newest film, his first film post Parasite, comes out on the 29th of March, Mickey 17. And the fact that Mickey 17 isn't even hitting my most anticipated list because it's not my most anticipated for March is really saying something about March. But it should be no surprise what my most anticipated film of March is because it was one of my most anticipated films of last year. It was my number 3 last year, and it is on my list again this year. It is Dune Part 2. This is a film that was supposed to come out in 2023, but is delayed because of the strike. There's a lot of films that are going to be delayed because of the strike. Films that may be delayed even further because of the strike. Hopefully Dune Part 2 does not get delayed any further. I think we're close enough now to the release date that it's going to hit that release date March 1st. I will be there in the IMAX as close to the screen as I can get without having to look up too much, and just ready to be absolutely blown away by what Denis Villeneuve brings to it. I love the first Dune, and the second Dune I heard is even better in terms of the action and the story. So I'm really excited. You're getting Florence Pugh in the mix. You're getting Austin Butler in the mix. You're getting more Zendaya than you did before. That is a triple threat of absolute insanity that I cannot wait to see. In April, my birth month, I love April, and April has some very promising titles, and then some that I'm not so sure about. The one being The First Omen on April 5th. Listen, I like the original Omen, but given how The Exorcist Believer panned out this year, I can't say I'm very excited for any of these legacy horror sequels or prequels anymore. I'm just gonna kind of stay a little trepidatious for some of these films. Godzilla X Kong. Again, I don't really know what the X is. Is it Godzilla times Kong? Is it like an XXOO thing, like Godzilla's giving Kong a little kiss on the cheek. I'm not really sure, but hey, it's gonna be fun kaiju fun, right? I mean, right? Rebel Moon 2 comes out on the 19th. I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that. I haven't even seen the first Rebel Moon yet, but I haven't heard great things, so I can't necessarily say I'm too excited for the second one. Here's a promising title, Civil War by Alex Garland. Now, I think the political messaging might be a little too on the nose given what I saw in the trailer, but again, it's just a trailer, and I think Alex Garland is one of the most interesting horror slash sci-fi writers, specifically sci-fi, of this generation. I loved Annihilation. I loved Ex Machina. It was amazing. I haven't seen Men yet. I need to check out that film, but Civil War looks like it could be a return to form of the Garland of the Ex Machina days, where he's just like one of the most creative, brilliant-minded geniuses. And not that he's not been since, but Men had kind of so-so reception, so I'm excited to see him burst back onto the scene. But my most anticipated movie for April was also on the list last year, was also delayed, and also stars Zendaya. It is Challengers. This trailer blew me away when I saw it, and I think this is kind of given an advantage in the fact that we've seen a trailer for this. We've seen trailers for Dune and Drive Away Dolls, whereas films later on the list we haven't even seen anything from yet. But I think having seen stuff from this movie in the trailers and having actually heard some critics before the strike, got to see some like early advanced screenings and loved it. I mean, I'm so excited for this. It feels like a different type of movie that Luca Guadagnino is used to making, but I still like Luca Guadagnino's films very much. I don't like Bones and All very much, but I love Call Me by Your Name. I really like Suspiria, so I'm really excited to see him take on like a bit of a different genre here with this kind of like love triangle thriller sports film. I think there's a lot of like good tonal stuff being juggled in the premise of Challengers, and I cannot wait to see the execution. I love the three leads they kind of put together for this. Everyone just exudes that sex appeal while also kind of just having this great movie star quality. It just looks like a film that is completely my cup of tea because I'm really into like these kind of twisty, turny, romantic kind of thrillers. With this little darker edge to it, but I also really like sports films. So like this is a great kind of marriage of the two. I don't know. I've just been so hooked from this trailer. Every time I watch it, it gives me like kind of that fist bump, like let's go, F yeah type feeling. And I know it's weird because it's like about like the steamy love triangle. Like why am I fist bumping? I don't know, but I think it's the choice of the Rihanna song they played with the trailer as well. I don't know. It's just one of those trailers that really pumps you up in the theater, and I cannot wait to see the movie. I don't know what to say. In May, we have some films. I mean, this is the start of the summer movie season, so we're going to start to see some films that are a bit questionable as to whether or not they're going to be really high quality or they're just going to make a lot of money or both. The first being The Fall Guy. This is a film we've already seen a lot of trailers for. Emily Blunt, Ryan Gosling. It looks good. David Leitch is directing it, but it could be one of those films I could see being maybe a box office success but not getting great reviews, or being a surprise hit in terms of reviews but not making much money. It could go either which way. Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic. I'm really excited for this. I don't know a ton about Amy Winehouse, but I like her music a lot. And I think this is one of those biopics or one of those stories of a musician that really aids itself well to a biopic because it is such a tragic one. And it does have a lot to say beyond just the music, but also about drug addiction and drug use and, someone lost tragically too soon. I think that's going to be really good. And so on the 17th, we have a movie called If, directed by John Krasinski. This could not be a bigger 180 from A Quiet Place, at least by the trailers. I mean, this looks like, I don't know what this looks like. I watched the trailers and I was like, this looks awful. And then I saw John Krasinski and I was like, maybe I'll give it a shot. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping the trailer is just awful and I really like the film, but I don't know. The trailer was not selling me on this premise, or maybe it would have when I was like 10 or 12. I don't know though. I'm just very intrigued, but I will not hold judgments. I will not judge a book by its cover quite yet until I've actually seen the film, and I will see the film, but my expectations are not that high. On the 24th, though, we have a sucker punch of three big films. One of them, maybe I'm not as excited for, which is Garfield, but is still probably going to bring in some money. Another one, which you may be surprised is not on my top 15, which is Furiosa. The trailers look great. There was some visual effects stuff that I was a little on. But again, it's a trailer, so some of the visual effects may not have been finished. But I love Mad Max Fury Road, and I love George Miller. The only thing is, like, prequels, are very hit or miss. Sometimes prequels are unnecessary, but still well made. Sometimes they're unnecessary and not well made. This one, I don't know if it's necessary or not. We'll have to find out from the prequel. I'm always just a little hesitant with prequels sometimes, but I am still excited for Furiosa nonetheless because it is George Miller and it's Anya Taylor-Joy. So already I'm very hooked by that premise. But my number one anticipated movie for May, it should be no surprise if you know me very well, it is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This franchise, since Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011, has been one of my favorites. Every single film, banger after banger after banger. I love what goes on visually in these films. I love the mocap work. These apes look so convincing, but because you have these actors playing these roles, the eyes and the facial expressions, everything's so raw and real. Nothing feels fake. It feels like one of those franchises where every single frame has been given labors of love toward. And this film, I'm a little hesitant because Andy Serkis is not back in the lead role. Caesar obviously died in the last movie. Spoiler alert. Sorry, it's been out for how many years now? 6, 7 years. But I do still really like this idea of still continuing the franchise, but not needing to make it married to this character and kind of expanding and exceeding boundaries. I kind of like that. I like how they're not trying to force another prequel on us or try to, tell a story between two or three or try to revive Caesar and be like, oh no, he didn't die. He just collapsed and stayed there for a few minutes and woke right back up. Like, I think there's really something to be said about a franchise that is so confident in the visual world they've created and built that they can then expand the story and go in different directions. And if this is good as the trailer makes it seem, because that trailer, another trailer like Challengers that I was amped for when I saw it for the first time, with that hawk swooping in and landing on the ape's arm. I mean, that trailer is just so good. I can watch it before every movie. That's a trailer I will never get sick of. Argyle trailer, people should have learned from that trailer. It's an amazing trailer. So I'm very excited about this film, even with the hesitations I have. If this film is a success, I could see them really, really growing from here and being one of the biggest franchises of this kind of era of filmmaking.
What a wonderful day!
Moving on to June, we're still in the summer movie season. A movie I'm shocked didn't make my list, but it's just a very stacked month. Ballerina, starring Ana de Armas. This is a spinoff of the John Wick universe. I mean, it's really hard to top John Wick, but Ana de Armas is a good start, She's great, and I cannot wait to see how that film turns out. The 21st, The Bike Riders, which was kind of an Oscars darling for this year, but then it kind of pushed to 2024. So I'm really excited to see that one as well. It's kind of Austin Butler's big follow-up to Elvis in terms of like a big leading role again, even though he's also going to be in Dune Part 2. So I'm very excited to see that. Him, Jodie Comer. Yeah, I'm intrigued by The Bike Riders. Also, I love Jeff Nichols, who did Take Shelter, was one of my favorite films of the past decade. So I'm very excited for The Bike Riders. The 28th, we're getting, speaking of John Krasinski in A Quiet Place, we're getting A Quiet Place Day One. This one I'm intrigued by. It is directed by the director of Pig, Michael Sarnowski, who I absolutely love. It stars Lupita Nyong'o. This has the potential to be really good. But again, these prequels have me a little hesitant sometimes. I just don't always know if they're going to kind of pan out to be as successful as the other films it's kind of set before. And those Quiet Place films are a high bar to set, I think. And then also on the 28th, we have Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1. I was doing research and I found out that there are not just one, but two Horizon films releasing in the summer, directed by Kevin Costner. This is kind of Kevin Costner's big return to cinema. Listen, I watched Dancing with the Wolves for the first time last year for Picture This, and I was not a fan. So to say that Horizon is not very anticipated from me is very true. I am not very excited for it, but again, I'm very eager to see if I'm going to be surprised by any of these things. Again, Top Gun Maverick was not on my radar, and then it became one of my favorite films of that year. So anything can happen. But my choice for June comes out on the 14th. I had to represent the studio, despite having a few misses from Lightyear and Elemental. I am going with Pixar, and I'm going with Inside Out 2. Now, the reason I have faith in Inside Out 2 is because A, the first Inside Out is really good. I'm not even the biggest fan of the first Inside Out, but I still really appreciate what it has to say. I think it's still a lovely film, great characters, great animation. And the thing is, for the most part, sequels in Pixar have been pretty good. I mean, the Toy Story sequels are great. I really, really like The Incredibles 2. I like Finding Dory. I know Lightyear wasn't very well received, but Lightyear was more of a spin-off than a sequel, so I still have hope that Inside Out 2 is going to be great. Now, Cars 2 wasn't great. Cars 3 I liked. So again, I think the sequel success rate for Pixar is not bad. Am I expecting this to be as good as the original? No. But if it's anywhere close to the quality of the original, I think it's still going to be a great summer hit. I think it's going to make a lot of money, hopefully get Disney out of the rut it's been in this whole year. Disney had the worst year probably ever since like the 80s. And I think it could use a big hit. And I think Inside Out 2 could be that big hit to get it back on track.
Sorry, we wanted to make such a good first impression.
What do you mean we?
Moving on to July. I only have 3 titles written down for July. There's not a lot right now that is announced for July yet. I mean, obviously you have Despicable Me 4, which is written by Mike White, one of my favorite Survivor contestants, writer of The White Lotus and School of Rock. So I'm excited for that because of Mike White, but I'm not a huge fan of all the other Despicable Me films. So I'm not necessarily like jumping for joy over that. And then another film that I'm sure people are going to be like, Dylan, how did you not put this on your list? It's Deadpool 3. And the honest reason is that aside from Guardians 3, like the MCU the past 2-3 years has not like blown me away. The only other film I could think of in the last 2 or 3 years that really blew me away that came close was maybe Eternals, and people hate Eternals. So like I'm not super sold on Deadpool 3 yet. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they incorporate Deadpool into the MCU proper, but I also fear that because we're going from Fox Deadpool to Disney Deadpool, I think every joke is just going to be about Disney and Fox, and I hope it's not that. I hope it's not just about the merger. I hope there's actual substance to the story as well. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like Deadpool 2, so I really don't have any sort of affinity for Deadpool beyond the first movie to where I'm really excited for another Deadpool movie. Obviously, if they land it really well and they just deliver a really good film, I'll be really excited to see it in the theater, but I'm holding my hesitations just because Marvel of late has not hooked me, and I'm just a little precarious about Deadpool's entry into the MCU, just because this has the potential to really fumble the ball. It has a potential to score a home run, and I also think it could be one of those just, duds that we just are rolling our heads and just saying, how did that go wrong? So that's where my fear lies with Deadpool 3, even though I'm sure it's on a lot of people's most anticipated list. But my most anticipated for July is actually Twisters on the 19th. And I know a lot of people are like, why do you have more faith in a Twister sequel than Deadpool 3? Well, here's the thing. Twisters doesn't feel like it's going to necessarily be a sequel to the original, or so just like another story about storm chasers that just happens to have the name Twisters because they want to get people in the seats. Because let's be honest, if you were to just make a movie about storm chasers and call it like Storm Chasers or call it Hurricane or call it Cyclone, people probably aren't going to go to the theater. But if you say Twisters, then there are going to be people who are fans of the original who are going to show up. So I don't blame them for making it a Twister movie, even though it has been said that it's not going to be this kind of married piece to the original. There aren't going to be a lot of characters, if any, that carry over. It's going to be its own unique thing. And that has me really excited because the director behind it, Lee Isaac Chung, his movie Minari just absolutely shattered my emotions. It was amazing. I loved how he used that rural atmosphere, which I'm sure he will here as well in Twisters. I love the cast. I mean, Daisy Edgar Jones alone is going to have me in that seat watching that movie on opening night. I'm just very excited for Twisters because I think this is a film that I don't think people are expecting to be anything special, but because of the talent attached and the fact that it doesn't really have any huge shoes to fill because all it's merely doing is taking the original's name, putting an S on the end. It's kind of like Alien and Aliens where James Cameron just wrote the S and put the money sign through it. I think this could be a similar deal where people are like, yeah, that was a solid summer movie. And I'm just really hoping that's the case. If not, I will eat my words. And when Deadpool 3 is an Oscar-nominated film or something, I will eat my words, I promise. In August, we've got Borderlands on the 9th, which just struck me as so odd. I mean, Eli Roth directing a video game movie just seemed like an interesting premise alone, but then Kate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, and Jack Black in the same movie together. Very interesting, but not necessarily my most anticipated. We also have Speak No Evil, which is a remake of the 2022, I believe it's a Danish film. So that'll be fun. I always like when they remake horror from, other countries and make them Americanized. Sometimes they work better than others, but I mean, The Ring, The Grudge, Let Me In, those are some great horror films that had its origins elsewhere in other parts of the world. So I'm excited to see this American remake of Speak No Evil. We also have Horizon Chapter 2, but as I said earlier with Horizon Chapter 1, I'm not necessarily excited for those films. Alien Romulus comes out on the 16th of August. Again, this is the first Alien film in a while, not directed by Ridley Scott. So I'm a little hesitant for it, even though I still like the Alien franchise no matter what. I just think it's at its best when Ridley Scott is behind it. So we'll have to see with that one. On the 30th, we have Kraven the Hunter, which, as little words for that as possible, the better. But my most anticipated movie for August comes on the 9th, and that is Flint Strong. This is a sports biopic about Clarissa T-Rex Shield, who is a boxer from Flint, Michigan. She trained to become the first woman in her country's history to win an Olympic gold medal in boxing, which is super cool. I really like sports films, as I said earlier, with challengers, and I think this is going to be one of those really interesting sports films, especially boxing movies and wrestling and fighting. Like the Iron Claw last year was great. I love Warrior. I love the Rocky franchise, Creed, Million Dollar Baby. Like all these films, something about boxing and the viscerality of it, and the punching and the just the very extreme nature of it lends itself really well to the cinema because there's also an added stakes. There's a danger to it that something like football doesn't necessarily bring when you bring it to a cinematic, lens. And I think that's what Flint Strong is going to be so great. That's why I think Flint Strong is going to be so great. It's also a woman director, which is great. I love to see some female representation here on my list. Also, Brian Tyree Henry. This is his first big movie post his Oscar nomination for Causeway, and I'm really excited. He plays the trainer essentially, and honestly, Brian Tyree Henry gives another quality performance like he has in pretty much every film he's done. I could see him getting another Oscar nomination for this, and honestly, I might have him as an early favorite to win. If he plays this trainer role really well and enough people see this film and like this film, I think he could be an two-time Oscar nominated performer by the end of next year. In September, we have some sequels here. We have Saw 11, which I like Saw 10, but I'm not quite ready to say Saw 11 is like my most anticipated movie of that month. We also have Transformers 1, which if you're going to give us another Transformers movie, doing an animated movie is kind of a cool way to kind of pivot back to the origins of the franchise. So I'm very excited to see Transformers 1. I've never really been excited for a Transformers film, but maybe the animated one will be the thing that gets me in the theater. But my most anticipated movie for September is going to be Beetlejuice 2. Now, listen, I really like the original Beetlejuice. I like the musical Beetlejuice. I'm still very, very scared for Beetlejuice 2 just because I don't think Tim Burton has necessarily been on the top of his game as of late. I also don't know if anyone is like clamoring for a Beetlejuice sequel, but I also think the power of Jenna Ortega is so strong. And the fact that you're bringing Winona Ryder back, you're bringing Michael Keaton back, I think there's really a potential for this to be a surprise, to be a real surprise. And even if it isn't necessarily that great, I still really liked Hocus Pocus 2 because it was a great time just spending time with these characters once again. And if at the very least this is us getting to see Winona Ryder and Michael Keaton play their roles all these years later, then I'll be satisfied. I don't expect too much from this film, but of all the films in September, this is the one that piqued my interest the most. In October, this was a pretty barren month as well. I mean, we have the Joker sequel, which if you know me, I despise the original Joker film. So am I that excited for a sequel? I'm more intrigued by the sequel because it's a musical and it's got Lady Gaga in it. But again, I just don't have faith that this is going to be an amazing film because I did not like the first film. Again, I'm ready to be surprised. I'm hoping to be surprised in that front. We also have Smile 2. I just haven't seen the first Smile, so I can't really say I'm excited for the second one. Same as Terrifier 3. Haven't seen Terrifier 1, haven't seen Terrifier 2. But what I am excited for, I mean, it's October. I got to pick a horror film, and that is The Wolfman, or I think it's just called The Wolfman. I don't think there's a the there. This is directed by Lee Winnell, who you might know as like the writer of Saw, the guy in Saw who's like kind of chained up with Carrie Elwes. But I know him as the director of The Invisible Man. This was a film, the last film I saw before the pandemic was The Invisible Man. And the whole pandemic, the whole time I was sitting at home, I was like, wow, if that was the last time I ever saw a movie in a theater, what a great movie to watch. And it kind of built as like this kind of fundamental ending of an era for me. For a while, I didn't know if theaters would open up after that. So The Invisible Man has this really deep kind of personal connection to me. And I just love that film. I think it's amazing. I think it's great how it uses the modern to meet some of the classic genre tropes while also trying to innovate all at once. I love the commentary it has on abusive relationships. This film, I don't know much about what it's trying to say in terms of like the social commentary. I don't really know what the premise is going to be aside from it being a Wolfman movie, but I love Christopher Abbott as well, and he's playing the lead in this thing. If you don't know who Christopher Abbott is, check out Possession, which is David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg's original film. He is really great in Possession, and he's really great in Poor Things, which just came out in theaters. So Christopher Abbott is incredible, and I can't wait to see him take on this role as the Wolfman. Now, the reason why I almost didn't pick it is because I don't necessarily know if it's gonna come out this year, because there have been rumors that it might get delayed. But for the sake of October being a weak month and me refusing to pick the Joker movie as my most anticipated, I will say Wolfman is my most anticipated for October, even though I have a feeling it'll get pushed. That's just how it crumbles cookie wise, I guess. In November, some more horror for you. Venom 3 coming out on the 8th. Listen, I love the Venom films, so bring on all the Venom all the time. I'm down for it. Also on the 15th, we have Alto Nights, which is a new Barry Levinson film starring Robert De Niro as a mob boss. Sign me up. Robert De Niro, mob boss. Listen, Robert De Niro, he's back, baby. He's back and better than ever. Killers of the Flower Moon, he gave his best performance in about 40 years. So I'm very excited to see him again. On the 22nd, we get Gladiator 2. Again, I don't know how it's going to be. I mean, this is a sequel to a movie that is decades old at this point. But again, Top Gun Maverick. There's that Top Gun Maverick factor of it could be amazing. Who knows? And then the 27th has my most anticipated movie for November. And if you're a theater kid, this can't not be one of your most anticipated movies. It's Wicked. Wicked Part 1. I wish they had just done one big movie instead of splitting it up into two. I just don't know if it makes sense to split it up, but who am I? I'm not a studio executive. I'm not the one who needs the money right now. I mean, I need money, but I'm not the one in charge of all the money for the studios. So I get why they are splitting it up because more money. But what if the first one's not a box office success? Then you're not going to make money with the second one. And then what if they don't even release the second one? Then it's just an unfinished story. Anyway, the Part 1 and Part 2 stuff aside, John M. Chu directed one of my favorite movie musicals of the last few years with In the Heights. Cynthia Erivo is quite literally the best performer I've ever seen on a Broadway stage. Her performance in The Color Purple literally shattered me. So to see her playing Elphaba, probably the biggest, most like iconic musical theater role ever, like that's some big shoes to fill. That's a pretty big broom to sit on, but she's going to be the one commanding that pointy witch's hat and really giving what I hope to be and what I anticipate to be the performance of the year. I mean, Cynthia Erivo needs her flowers, needs her due, and this is going to be a way for the mainstream audience to finally understand what it is that these theater kids like myself have been clamoring for years, that Cynthia Erivo is the real deal. And Ariana Grande as well. I think a lot of people know her as like pop star Ariana Grande, but don't realize she has musical theater roots as well. And she'll be playing Glinda. And I can't wait to see her, kind of show off more of her classical side of her voice and her vocal technique. I love this story just as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. I think it's so inventive in how it plays with the IP of the classic tale while also creating something fresh and new, which isn't fresh and new anymore because it came out in 2003, but you know what I mean. It's fresh and new comparatively to 1939 when The Wizard of Oz came out. Now, I know I said earlier I'm against prequels. I'm not against prequels, but I always have a little hesitancy towards prequels, but I've seen Wicked on stage, so I know it's at least got the juice and it's a good story. So I'm a little less hesitant for this prequel in particular, and I cannot wait for Wicked. And now we have December, which is also kind of weak in my opinion. I mean, the Mufasa Lion King prequel, I just think is one of the most bizarre movies on the slate. I mean, let alone the fact that Barry Jenkins is directing it when he could be doing so much better. But hey, get that check, baby. Sonic 3, again, didn't see Sonic 2, so I can't necessarily say I'm too excited for Sonic 3, but hey, I'm sure it'll be charming. Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim, I think that's the name of it. It's another animated film like Transformers 1, so I'm excited that like this IP stuff is kind of getting a fresh new lens and a fresh new look. I think people are realizing that by remaking stuff live action over and over and over again, you're not going to get the greatest reception, and I think people learned that with the Lord of the Rings series. A lot of people liked it but didn't love it, and a lot of people kind of forgot about it. So the fact that they're going to do an animated film makes me a little bit more optimistic for this IP and this franchise, because I think they're at least trying a new method. They're taking a new swing here and hoping that this will kind of catapult them into more success in the future. And I'm really excited to see it, even though I know nothing about it. But my most anticipated film comes out on Christmas. And what an odd film to release on Christmas, but hey, I'm here for it. It is Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. Now listen, Robert Eggers is one of the most polarizing directors working right now. I hate The Witch. I love The Lighthouse. I was a little mixed on The Northman, but regardless, I think he has one of the most unique visual styles and sensibilities of any director working today. And I think Nosferatu is the perfect project for him. This is a at this point, 100-year-old film. This film is, I think, either 100 years old or nearing 100 years old. And the fact that he's going to revive it for this new era, and the fact that Willem Dafoe is in that picture with all the fire, this is going to be one of those epic movies that I think is just going to be undeniably on so many people's most anticipated list because of the curiosity and just the idea that we're getting a Nosferatu film 100 years later, and the guy who did The Witch and The Northman is going to do it. I mean, come on. I'm so sold. But now comes the fun part of talking about the films that don't have release dates. I'm going to rattle through these because I have a pretty long list. Obviously, Jordan Peele had a new film coming out that got delayed, so who knows if it's even going to come out this year. Maxine was on my list last year, but the competition is just too stiff this year, even though I'm still very excited to see how that trilogy caps. Problemista, which was an A24 film that was kind of showing in like limited release and then just never came out, and they delayed it till next year. I don't know what's happening with that film, but it looks pretty promising. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Is it going to happen? I don't know, and I don't think so. I think it'll be delayed. Mother's Instinct. This is a film I'm very excited for because they actually filmed this on my childhood street. It was great. I got to go home and see my parents and actually saw them filming this film with Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain. So it's going to be cool to like recognize my street and my block when watching that film. The Actor, which is a Neon release starring Andre Holland as an actor who loses his memory in a fight, and throughout the movie he's trying to like regain his consciousness and memory and try to figure out who he is. And apparently he was like a famous actor, but because he loses his memory, he doesn't know he's famous and stuff like that. It just seems like a really intriguing premise, and I'm really excited for that film. Nora, which is the newest Sean Baker film, is coming out next year. Blitz, the newest Steve McQueen film. It's a war film, so I'm very excited for that as well. Death of a Unicorn. This one, very weird premise. It's about these two people who like run over a unicorn when they're driving, and I don't really know much else beyond the premise, but it's another Jenna Ortega film, but I couldn't put 3 Jenna Ortega films on the list. I needed to cap it somewhere, so I'm not necessarily putting it on the list this time. A Different Man, starring Sebastian Stan. This one, just all the images of him in that makeup look so amazing. It almost feels like The Elephant Man from the 80s, the film by David Lynch. It's kind of this man who goes through all these surgeries, and then there's like this element of an actor who's like stalking him or he's stalking them. It almost feels like a May December type thing. May December meets The Elephant Man. I don't really know the whole premise, which is why I didn't put it on my list, but it's intriguing nonetheless. We also have Hard Truths, which is Mike Leigh's newest film. I love Mike Leigh. Kinds of Kindness. This is an anthology film by Yorgos Lanthimos. This should be on my list, but because we haven't heard much buzz about it, I have a feeling it could either be delayed, but it is an anthology film, which sounds very cool, and he is reuniting with Emma Stone, which is always great to see. Megalopolis. This is another film that has been delayed and delayed and delayed. This is Francis Ford Coppola's newest film. I don't think I remember the last time we got like a new Francis Ford Coppola film. Who knows if he still has the juice? I'm not sure. I'm excited to see if he does. Another one, Polaris, which is the new Lynn Ramsey film. I love Lynn Ramsey's last film, You Were Never Really Here, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Here she is returning to work again with Joaquin Phoenix. This time, the premise is, listen to this, set in Alaska during the 1890s, an ice photographer meets the devil. That is the only premise we have, and all we have to go off is that Lynn Ramsey's directing it and Joaquin's acting in it. But hey, that premise, those actors, director, sold. There's another film that I'm assuming everyone is expecting me to put on my list, but the reason I'm not is because I'm going to be saving it for next year's list, because it's coming out in the UK in 2024, but it's coming out in the US in 2025, which is Paddington in Peru. So before everyone's saying, how could you leave the sweet bear out of it? It's because I'm saving it for 2025, because I know I'm not going to get to see it till January of next year, and I don't want to get my hopes up for something I'm not going to see until the next new year. Needless to say, this will be number one most anticipated of next year, but we have to wait till next year, guys, I promise. But I did settle on a few films for my most anticipated that didn't get a release date. The first being one that some people have seen, some people haven't. It is Hitman by Richard Linklater. This is a kind of rom-com meets Hitman thriller type film. Listen, it's a weird premise. It's a weird clashing of tones, but Richard Linklater, I have the faith that that man can make any premise good. He is one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite directors working right now. He is in my Mount Rushmore of directors. If you have 4 faces on the Mount Rushmore, he is one of them. So any Richard Linklater film, I will be seated there to see. I also love Glenn Powell, and I think he's on the rise as one of our great, like, new up-and-coming movie stars, if he's not already. I think he was great in Top Gun Maverick, Anyone But You. I mean, he's really kind of garnering a presence presence, and I cannot wait to see this film because I think this could put him on the map and potentially get him an Oscar nomination. The other film I decided to put on my list is a film by two of my favorite directors, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. The film is called Freaky Tales, and the premise is basically there are four interconnected stories taking place at real locations and real historical events in 1980s Oakland. That's all we really have to go off of. There's really not a ton in the premise. The cast, though, is so amazing. Dominique Thorne, Pedro Pascal, Ben Mendelsohn, Jack Champion, Angus Cloud, the late great Angus Cloud, Normani. There's so many great talents in this film, but the real driving factor for me is Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. I feel like they got so much crap for Captain Marvel, which admittedly I don't think is a perfect film. I don't even think it's an amazing film, but I think so many people have only seen Captain Marvel and just want to say those two directors, they suck. But if you watch any of their other work, Half Nelson, Sugar, my favorite sports film of all time, Sugar, go check it out. If you don't know what it is, shame on you. Just kidding. Not many people know what it is, but seriously, go watch Sugar. It's so good. Mississippi Grind. It's kind of a funny story. These are films that I think are way better than just Captain Marvel indicates. I think they are two of the most talented directors, some of the best writers. I mean, the way they understand empathy better than so many other people. Listen, I didn't need a premise for Freaky Tales to know that it was going to be one of my most anticipated films of the year because I love their work so much. I love their direction. I love their writing. And if it's anywhere close to the quality of like Sugar or Mississippi Grind, then we're in for an amazing treat. But there is one final 2024 release that I had to put on my list before I rank these. And this is a film that not many people have heard of. If you watch this channel, you may have heard of it in passing, but it is called Band on the Run. Now, for those who don't know, I am in Band on the Run. I am one of the supporting characters, Cody. This film follows a group of guys on their way to play their first ever South by Southwest festival in 1990s Detroit. They really embrace the Detroit music scene of the 1990s, which is just a fascinating time period in history. I mean, prepping for this role, I did so much research on the Detroit music scene and just kind of studying all I could about the area and the time and the place and the politics and the music and the culture and the atmosphere of the time. But it follows this group of people on their way to play at essentially this like Battle of the Bands, this South by Southwest festival. But one of the characters, the lead character, Jesse, who's the drummer, his father is very ill. And the original plan is to leave his dad, Thomas, at this home to be taken care of. But when they go to drop him off at the home, Jesse has a gut instinct that he can't leave his father there in that facility and he needs to take him with him. So it becomes kind of this fun kind of hijinks road trip comedy of all these guys in a van together with this grouchy old man in a wheelchair. It's a really fun premise. You know, all these guys in a van, what happens? You know, the rivalry between our band, I say our band, my character's band and this other band. I play Cody, the bassist of the band. Listen, I know that this is not going to be on most people's most anticipated list because not many people have heard of it. But I hope people hear about it as the year trickles on because I'm very proud of the work. There's not a set release date yet. We don't know for sure what festivals and stuff it may appear at, but it is still going to be seen by me in 2024. So I had to put it on my list of most anticipated because it is a project I'm so proud of. I'm so proud to be a part of, and I'm just so anxious to see myself, but also see how many other people respond to it. I got to work with the great Larry Bagby, actor who was in Hocus Pocus and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Walk the Line. He plays Thomas, Jesse's father. But the whole crew, my fellow cast members, Daniel and Matt and Landon and Yusuf, and it was just such an amazing crew and cast and just such an amazing time. And I plan on doing future videos, just kind of talking about my experience on set because it really was just a once in a lifetime opportunity. Hopefully not once in a lifetime. I hope I get more opportunities to work with these directors and this crew and also work just in film again because I love it so much. It's my passion. My passion is acting first and foremost, and then this channel second, which is not to say I'm not passionate about this channel, but it was really amazing to see kind of my dreams come true before my eyes and getting to step on set every day and just see these people who also have the same dream as mine, getting to put together something so beautiful. And I really hope you all dig it. I hope you all love it. I hope you like the music in it. It's a really great film with some great characters, some hilarious bits, some great moments. It's rated R, but it is a fun well-earned are, and I'm very, very, very proud of it. So it is one of my most anticipated films of the new year, obviously, because it's the film that has the most personal, sentimental meaning to me. So now it's time to rank all 15 films I chose for most anticipated. At number 15, I'm going to put The Miller's Girl, just because January is pretty weak of a month, but that is still the one I'm going to highlight. At 14, we'll put the other Jenna Ortega joint. It is Beetlejuice 2. I have my hesitations, but I'm still excited. Another legacy sequel here, number 13, we'll have Twisters. At number 12, we'll put Wolfman here just because I don't know if it's going to be delayed or not. 11, right outside the top 10, is where we'll stick Drive Away Dolls. At number 10, kicking off our top 10 with Pixar, we have Inside Out 2. At number 9, a potential Oscar darling for next year, Flint Strong. At 8, we have the new Bowden and Fleck film, Freaky Tales. At number 7 is where I'm going to put the biggest, most anticipated musical of the year, Wicked Part 1. At number 6 is where we're going to put Nosferatu, felt fitting, 666, the devil, Nosferatu, vampire, I don't know. Number 5, we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I just love this franchise to death. At number 4, we'll put Hitman. Richard Linklater is in my top 4 directors of all time, so it's fitting he's here in the top 4. At number 3, I put it here last year, I'll put it here again. Dune Part 2 comes in at number 3. At number 2, I have Challengers. It's the most excited I've been for a trailer in a long time. The trailer has me hype every time. But number 1, my most anticipated film of the year, should be no surprise if you heard me talk about it. It is Band on the Run, the film I was in, the film I'm excited for my friends to see, my family to see, all of you to see. It's a film I'm proudest of the year, and I cannot wait to see it. Oh my God, I'm going to get to see my movie this year. I'm so excited. That is my most anticipated list for 2024. What movies are you most excited about? Leave your list in the comments below of the movies you're most anticipated for. You can go month by month if you want, or you can just give me your top 10 or 15 or 20, just general anticipated of the year. If you want to see my bigger list, top 30, go to my Letterboxd. It's posted there. Otherwise, thank you so much. You can expect reviews for mostly all these films, assuming they all come out this year. And of course, some more coverage on Band on the Run as it gets closer to more people seeing it. I will be doing some videos on that as well. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you had a great holiday, a great new year. If you want to check out what's happening on the channel this year, some changes, some new additions, some subtractions, check out the top right corner there where you can find a link to a video explaining all that. Otherwise, have a very safe rest of your January. We'll see you tomorrow for some Marvel-ous Movie Mondays, our What If episode where we recap the second season of What If. Otherwise, stay cool, stay pretty, and we'll see you next time.